deep in the shadows. I know it's hard to put one foot in front of the other.
Hi guys, CeeChronicles here. Welcome and welcome back to my channel. I post fragrance related content here and would very much appreciate it if you did consider subscribing. That is, if you are not yet part of the family. Now, to those who are already subscribed, thank you so much for coming back. This is going to be a video dedicated on fragrances that to my nose do not feel like clones or dupes, and the fragrances are from the Middle East. I'm going to be, showcasing them by house. Not going to get too much into detail so that we do not spend the whole day here. Now, the very first house is going to be Swiss Arabian, and please do take note, guys, that this is not exhaustive of all the Swiss Arabian fragrances on the market. It is limited to the ones that I have in my collection. Now, the one thing about the house of Swiss Arabian is they do have a lot of fragrances that I feel are not inspired by anything, and that I feel are their own creation. They are the mix of the Swiss and the Arabians, right? So their fragrances will incorporate some Western elements and some of them are Middle Eastern elements. Now, if you want to make sure that you do not go wrong when it comes to Swiss Arabian, especially if you are tired of clones and dupes, you can try their oils. This one is called Nora, guys. The sweet, spicy, shampooing, honeyed scent with some vanilla. Beautiful there. It's got some wafts of a Middle Eastern tone to it, but gorgeous. Doesn't smell like anything I've ever smelled before, in another fragrance. Another oil that you could try, of course, is going to be this one. This one is Amali. You can still get this one. Amali does not smell like anything I have within my collection, so it doesn't feel like with this oil they were going for anything in particular except just a creation, of a sweet scent that you will enjoy. This fragrance is going to incorporate some vanilla, some caramel, crisp apple, as well as some pineapple. So there's going to be a vivid fruitiness to this particular oil, right? Another oil that I have, which I haven't seen much being, said about it, and I think maybe it's because it's been discontinued or something, because I did see it on a couple of sites, but it's getting harder and harder to find. It is called Zara, guys. This one is built of marigold, yellow florals. It is very soothing there. Soft to an extent, but it does have some aldehydes, quite feminine and quite delicate. You won't get a vivid oud as I get in Nora in this, but this one does list oud. Nora, I think if I'm not mistaken, did not list oud. This one does list oud, but it's actually vice versa to my nose. I do not get an oud in this Zara, but I do get like wafts of something that feels oody woody in that Nora. Another oil that I have from them as a recommendation is going to be Jamila. This one is going to have the apple, the marmalade, so it's going to be themed in that sweet feel. These oils will obviously help you enhance, whatever fragrance you're wearing, or if you're one of those people that do not like fumes per se, but you like to smell beautiful, then the oils are going to do it for you. The four oils which I did show you just now, the Nora, the Zara, the Amali, together with the Jamila, to my nose, did not feel as though Swiss Arabian, was going after a particular DNA. And please note, guys, that while I talk about these fragrances, there will be some DNAs that are going to be similar in some way, shape or form, because the fragrance industry in itself has grown so much to an extent that, to have a fragrance that is going to outright not remind you of anything at all, might be something that is tricky there. But I just picked these ones that I have because I feel are DNAs that these companies were just going for and created, just because they wanted to create perfume, right? Another one that you could try your hands on is Imperial Arabia. This is going to be spicy, woody. There's a little bit of incense and some apricot here. So the apricot in this Imperial Arabia adds a familiarity to an otherwise Middle Eastern toned fragrance. This to my nose feels like a good starter Middle Eastern fragrance if you're looking for one, because what you are going to get here is the mix of spices, the mix of incense and the woods and the oud, but done in a subtle way, which sometimes, scares a lot of people when it comes to Middle Eastern, fragrances, because once there is a mention of oud there, then sometimes things go haywire. So those are the 5 that I do have in my collection from the House of Swiss Arabian that I feel are outright, standalones. Although for some of you guys, they may remind you of one thing or the other. The next house I want to talk about here is going to be that of Khadlaj. Some I have reviewed already. I'm just cluing you up, right? So there is Harim Al Sultan, the oil. oil. There's been an extension of this oil. I think now there's a silver one. There could also be a black one. I'm not sure, but I do remember seeing a silver one. But I do feel that it is this oil, guys, that actually put Khadlaj on the limelight for creating something that felt like they were not going for anything. So Kareem Al Sultan, guys, is just a beautiful tropical peachy plum, style of fragrance there with a little bit of some patchouli, but the patchouli you're gonna get mostly in the perfume concentration of it. The difference between the two is very, very negligible. It's going to be more to do with whether you prefer oils and whether you want this very DNA kind of more sweetened there, because I feel the oil communicates more than the perfume does. It could be that it's gonna sweeten, but I find this being a lighter version, more bringing forward the fruits, but very subtle there than what the oil does. So these two, to my nose, do not feel like DNAs that we're borrowing off something, but they will have that familiarity, guys, of a fruity, especially fruity, fun, young scent with a little bit of some florals and of course some patchouli, without necessarily feeling as though Khadlaj was going after a DNA that is already on the market. Another one from Khadlaj that I want to highlight here, which has that pineapple element that is going to be similar to that you'll find in Creed Aventus, but there's going to be a twist, like an obvious twist where one can argue from now until tomorrow that this has nothing to do with Creed Aventus, and I would still agree, because there is a shift here in the inclusion of spices, woods, making this one warm and safe enough for both genders, with a twist where if you walked past, no one would outright say you're wearing Creed Aventus. Now, the last one that I'm going to highlight is a standalone, and this particular one, Sunshine Musk, guys, reminds me of absolutely nothing that I have in my collection, that I have worn before. It is a piercing floral, a bit of a heady floral there. It says Sunshine Musk, but it's not so much to do with the musk. It's quite a pushy floral there. It is getting better with time. The day I unboxed it and the first week I wore it, it was a little bit all over the place, but I can certainly say to you, I can't think of something that is on the market that kind of feels like this. So this particular one, to my nose, does not remind me of anything enough for me to call it a clone. Because when it comes to smells, I could give you an example of chicken, for example, right? Say you went and you purchased chicken from McDonald's and another person purchased chicken from KFC. Both those people will be eating chicken, but it's a rendition of chicken, like a version. The McDonald's version is going to taste a certain way. The KFC version is going to taste a certain way. So because scents and smells are like that, there's going to be elements there that make us reviewers dig into some of these fragrances to try as hard as possible, to make sure that we can explain them as close as possible to something that's already on the market. And it's even different from the Infini Absolute, because with the Infini Absolute, I could, give you a little bit of some reference to that Creed Aventus. It is a twist. This, nothing comes to mind. Next up is going to be the House of Lattafa, and I did try to limit the ones that I will bring here to a decent number, because I do have a lot of Lattafas that I can bring you here and then explain to what extent I think what is doing what. But I do feel the House of Lattafa itself does have standalones, guys. Of course, recently being that Yara Candy, that Yara Candy is an outright Lattafa standalone, but I don't have that fragrance. So I'm going to talk about the fragrances that I do have. Maya Natural Intense may surprise you guys, because it has been likened a lot to that Giorgio Armani Acqua di Jour, a fragrance that I actually own. I do see the similarities, guys, as to why we would liken this one to that Acqua di Jour, the aquaticness of it, the freshness of this fragrance. But this one has a heightened melon there, an unripened tangerine in it. It's got a fig that adds a twist there. And while Acqua di Jour has got the mint note, this one doesn't have that. So this becomes a fragrance, guys, that takes one direction in the beginning, which you are going to be yo-yoing in for 3 hours, somewhere thereabout, after which way later it then starts to give you that familiarity to that Acqua di Jour by Giorgio Armani. So this, I would say, I don't think is an outright clone. I think it is a twist. I think it is Lattafa's version of a fresh summer scent that kind of coincidentally ended up, arriving at something that feels like Acqua di Jour. But the fact that we can explain that it arrives at that really later could possibly mean that this is a standalone, right? Next up, guys, is going to be Zanzibar. Now, when it comes to this, I think there is nothing to explain. This is almost like the Yara candy. You know, when they engaged master perfumers to do a fragrance like this, teriyaki and stuff, you know, we know that, you know, no master perfumer would have gone there to give us a clone, right? But anyway, I had to explain it nonetheless. Zanzibar may not be my favorite, because of the salty note that it has, because of that marine accord that it has, and that coconut water, and the fact that it does really remind me of a body of water to an extent that I wouldn't call it my favorite, but this is outright a standalone, guys, from the house of Lattafa. Next up, of course, is going to be this one. I'm not going to blab much about it because this one has been discontinued. Assateer. Assateer to my nose feels like nothing I've smelled on the market. I do get something in here that could be sandalwood, and I do get something that feels like a bitter cardamom, but it is just a nice juice overall. It doesn't smell Middle Eastern. It smells a little bit sweet and sour at the same time, and does feel to my nose like this is Lattafa's standalone. Doesn't have a Middle Eastern touch to it. That's the one thing I really like about this fragrance. So it doesn't have that familiarity that you're going to have with other Lattafas, where you will say, okay, this is Oud Mood, and this is an extension of Oud Mood. Oud Mood reminds me of this. So this, how do you then say this does not remind you of that as well? This is outright something different, something that I came across in a store and just bought it. And it was the last one on the shelf, guys. It's called Assateer. If you want to hunt for it, you can. You would probably get it off eBay because it's discontinued. The next up is going to be these two, okay? Especially Camera. Camera is the one I'm here to redeem. Especially why? Because this one has gone around a lot as, oh, if you want Angel's Share, if you want it. This to me, the very first day I got it, guys, I could see how Angel's Share, the DNA in itself, could have been the driving force, you know, behind making this. But what I would say to somebody who loves Angel's Share is, if you want this, you know, if you love that Angel's Share DNA, you know, that cinnamon, the spices, that sort of thing, you know, the apple pie feel, and the woods, you could get this, but this is going to be like in the same fragrance family than it is a clone, right? And by that I mean this does not smell like Cocktail Intense from Fragrance World. If you've used Cocktail Intense from Fragrance World, you will know outright this is an Angel's Share clone. This does not give me that. It is boozy, yes, but I think it is the dates, possibly, you know, the overdoseness of the overdose feel of the dates that makes it different. I don't know, you know, but this I feel is a fragrance that was created out of that pyramid, you know, where they just wanted something of their own that's going to kind of feel like that without being an Angel's Share clone. Then there was, of course, the extension of the Camera, which is the Kawa. Now this version is going to remind you of this, but the difference here is they did include the praline. I think there's praline in here, vanilla, and then there is the coffee, and the coffee in here does not make this one, you know, if you're looking at the two-tone bottle of it, feel like a distinct in your face everyday coffee. You know, it is built around some cardamom, and the coffee is quite soft there, and it does have very light fruit as opposed to this has the thickened fruits that feel sticky, you know, like raisins, while this one has got the lighter fruits. So it may be redundant to own both, but the reason why they're here is I just wanted to say I do feel these are Lattafa's standalone fragrances that do, of course, will, of course, maybe have been created, especially this one, by the fact that there was that Angel's Share without them really trying, you know, to have another Angel's Share on the market. And then, of course, we have teriyaki. Now, if you're new to the house of Lattafa and you want something that's going to be outright different, but might remind you, this is why I said, I will keep on saying this. Once you smell a fragrance hard enough, it's going to remind you of something that you have smelled before. And this one, unfortunately, you know, carries that stamp, that DNA, that Quentin Bish DNA, and he happens to be the one that gave us the label. And if you have smelled label, you're gonna get traces of label in this, but this is not like label. This to me actually feels like, DNA that Lattafa has given us in camera to my nose, okay, in camera, a little bit of that without it being camera, and that footprint that Quentin Bish gave us there in Labelle without it being Labelle. So this is unique enough to purchase. Say for instance, you want a Middle Eastern fragrance that is not exactly cloning a particular fragrance there on the market, but make sure you do love leather, because in as much as it has honey, almond, apricot there, it does have a leather note that can be bothersome, to other people. So this is teriyaki. This is Lattafa standalone, at least to my nose, right? The only reason why anyone could argue that this is not a standalone is you'd be arguing for Lattafa against Lattafa, like Lattafa for Lattafa. The one thing I can say about this one is it does have that footprint that Lattafa kind of is identified by, and in this case I'm not talking about the oud, I'm talking about how Lattafa mixes their spices, their cinnamon, that sort of thing. So it does have a spiciness there, an almondiness there, something that you will find as a footprint in some of the fragrances that Lattafa has given us before. I have lost you there. What I'm simply saying is, if you have purchased fragrances like from the house of Amouage, for example, there is a DNA, like a footprint that Amouage has got in maybe 50% of their fragrances, not all of them, where while you smell it there, this kind of has that, Amouage footprint in it. So that is what I get from Lattafa, sir. I do get a familiarity in how Lattafa uses their spices here without that oudi familiarity, if you will, because once you say familiarity, Lattafa became one of those fragrance houses that was playing around with oud a lot, before they went, French and to a more crowd pleasing direction. I'm not talking about oud in here. I am talking about just the spiciness there. It will have that spiciness that you will identify with Lattafa fragrances, but without it feeling as though they were going for a particular DNA. So I think Lattafa, sir, is a standalone. Another standalone, guys, that is going to also surprise you is going to be Ajwad. Now, this has gone around a lot as smelling like Roses Vanille, but guess what? If I told somebody who loves Roses Vanille to go and buy Ajwad, they might come back and say, why did you do that to me? Okay, because there's going to be that element where it feels as though Roses Vanille could have had an influence in this, but it's not a Roses Vanille clone, right? It takes a Middle Eastern direction that you either love or you can't stand, right? This is a heady feel of a fragrance. So if you love your Roses Vanille and I just tell you go buy this, you will buy it, but you might come back and say, this is too much of something. Okay, so I feel this is Lattafa's rendition, could have, just like in camera, been driven by the fact that that Roses Vanille DNA was popular, but they definitely put their weight in it. So this is another Lattafa, guys, that I feel has got at least 85% of its own identity, right? Of its own identity. If you are liberal in, how your nose interprets fragrances, if you're not stuck up on the fact that it has gone around as, oh, Roses Vanille, Roses Vanille, you will enjoy this fragrance on its own, because this identity that I'm talking about actually outweighs, that theme, that umbrella DNA of Roses Vanille, to an extent that I can say this can very well be a fragrance that is just a standalone. I did speak about this one pretty recently. Now, fragrances like this, I think even from other houses, will be fragrances that are not really going for a particular DNA. In case you're looking at musks like this, I think these are just fragrances that these houses play around with for the sake of just amping up their already existing fragrances. So I think this entire line might not be inspired by anything except for Lattafa just giving us a particular note to add, to an already existing DNA. Mine is called Wild Vanille, but they have gone to extend this line by introducing a rose one and another one and another one, okay? And Adal Zaafaran has got the same, and I think Paris Corner has got the same. So these ones that come in a murky juice, to me, don't feel like they're clones. And then there's Oud Mood Reminiscent, all right? So I had to pull this particular one on its own, but the other one that could have been here with it would have been the Oud Mood Musk. That one I feel is just a musk that we were given by Lattafa, not necessarily going for anything at all. And then when it comes to Reminiscent, also known as the silver one, this one, Just smelling it like this feels as though it's got some oud, but the note pyramid that is put there does not include some oud. But I could, almost say I do get a little bit of an oudiness in this. There is the ambergris in this. There is the oak moss. That is what they have listed, and there is an apple. And the apple in this is going to come across as crisp only if you have smelled the oud mood. If you haven't smelled the oud mood, you won't be able to get the apple in this one, right? That is what makes this one very different. It's that crispness that you get in this one that kind of differentiates it, from the oud mood. Of course, oud mood is heightened in everything else, the oud, the woods, the spices, the everything. So this one has got like a crisp accord to it, but you will find it a little bit heavy if you're new to Middle Eastern fragrances. So this, I feel, is also a standalone. And last, but of course not limited to, is going to be Ajaib Dubai. Ajaib Dubai, guys, may have a little bit of some Black Phantom thing there, but for you to refer somebody and say, if you're looking for Black Phantom, go and buy this, they will slap you in the face. This one has got the pineapple, but there is, a mixture of ingredients here that then takes a very different direction, where you feel as though it is Lattafa that was just going for a very sweetened pineapple forward fragrance there, but mostly caramel, vanilla, butterscotch, and the woods. So I think this is one that can almost qualify as a standalone, in as much as some people have dug out that Black Phantom thing in it. So that is it, guys, for the house of Lattafa. Next up, guys, is going to be the house of Afnan, and I only have 2 Afnans in my collection. I do intend to extend the collection of the Afnan. I do have other subsidiaries of Afnans, but from the actual house of Afnan, I only have 2, Rare Passion and Rare Tiffany. This is Rare Tiffany, guys, mostly built on florals. There's some sandalwood, especially if you like sandalwood. It is a little bit piercing in here. The florals that you're going to get from this particular one are yellow florals. There is going to be a fizzy ginger as well. It's got a little bit of a sour tone, in as much as it does have sandalwood. It is beastly. It is a bold floral and quite pushy, but does not remind me of anything that I've smelled before. So this, I do feel, is a standalone. And then its sister, Rare Passion, I do feel is also a standalone, because this one I have brought it to you a couple of times, tried to describe it, but cannot exactly liken it to anything. It is built around rose and a double musk, so you are going to get some muskiness in this fragrance, and there is a subtle sweetness to this. There is also an amber and an orange blossom in this, but it's not enough for me to say this one is going after a particular DNA. There may be remnants of something in there in the end that kind of pops up, that Bobby Doll head thing, but I think this is a fragrance that was just clearly built by Afnan for the house of Afnan. So from the house of Afnan, guys, it's not limited to, but I feel these 2 that I have are not clones of anything. Next up is going to be the house of Paris Corner, and again, it's not limited to the ones I'm going to show you, but if you're looking for Paris Corners that are not going to feel as though they were going for anything, you could start with Eternal Coffee. This is just going to satisfy you if you love coffee scents. Milky coffee scents, doesn't feel like it's drawing inspiration from any fragrance on the market. Of course, there could be some that will say, oh, if you like French coffee, if you like this. No, I just feel this is just a nice, beautiful, creamy coffee that Paris Corner decided to give us. There's also Kissa Blue. Kissa Blue is a beautiful fragrance. It's actually at this level because I outright forgot it. It just went at the back of my shelves there. Beautiful, nice, clean, fresh floral there, without it aligning with a particular fragrance that's already on the market. So this, to my nose, for now, I'm going to say is probably Paris Corner standalone. Tuscan as well. Before they gave us Caramel Cascade, I'm going to say it was just a line that felt as though it was dedicated to those summer, fun, fruity scents, the splash-on fragrances. So it's going to be this Tuscan, a blue Tuscan, another 2-toned Tuscan, except of course the Caramel Cascade, because in the Caramel Cascade we did then establish that there was a little bit of some Bianco Latte in it. So the Tuscan line, I think, is independently to Paris Corner. Of this range, I picked out Pear Potion. I think Pear Potion is this Pear Potion. I think this is another fruity punch that Paris Corner decided to give us, and it does look like the fruity themed style of fragrances from Paris Corner are just fragrances that maybe they just play around and drop there. Kissa Delicious is another one that I'm going to cut some slack here and say, in as much as This one has the caramel and does align with gourmand fragrances. I think this was just Paris Corner's own rendition of a, biscuity style of fragrance. What I get that is almost similar to this one is that Sud de Pacifique, the cacao something, but I think the Sud de Pacifique, the cacao one, came after this one. So I think this is probably just another standalone, right? So that is what I can say about the House of Paris Corner. And please do not catch feelings in case you are aligned or affiliated with any of these houses. I couldn't bring all of them. I just had to limit it to what would make the video not kill me in terms of editing. And the next up, guys, is going to be the House of Arabiyat. I think these two guys are standalones, right? Cranberry musk as well as blueberry musk. The one that has gone around as smelling a lot like Fenty is this one, but I think where it starts and ends in terms of similarities is just going to be that blueberry. The fact that the blueberry in here is vivid and interprets just like the blueberry in Fenty, but I think that's where it starts and ends. I do not think they were going for the Fenty here. I actually am not sure whether this one was there before Fenty. I'm actually not, because I remember seeing this one a while ago before Fenty, so this could very well have been on the market way before Fenty. I don't know. I stand to be corrected, but why they're here, guys, is I do feel that these are just standalones from the house that are made for those who love fruity musks that they can wear as standalones or as layering fragrances. So cranberry musk and blueberry musk from the House of Arabiyat, I think, are original fragrances. All right. Next up is going to be, and we're about to finish, is going to be the House of Zaafaran. The first one being Hiba. Hiba is going to be favored by anyone who likes caramel forward fragrances, florals, that sort of things, patchouli. That is what you're going to get here, a feminine heady floral, and it is that feminine heady feel in this fragrance that you're going to identify in other fragrances. But I think Hiba was just a concoction that they came up with to satisfy any lady there that just loves to smell of a very heady fragrance and also favors patchouli fragrances. So I think this is a standalone, guys. This I'm not going to dwell much on because this is going to fall under the same description that I gave with the other Lattafa, which was this one, where I said you will find fragrances like this from the Middle Eastern houses. I don't think these ones are trying to copy anything, in as much as this one is cotton candy. They do have one called pistachio, and that pistachio is the one that will redeem them, from that umbrella thing of, oh, I think they were going for yum pistachio or something. It smells nothing like yum pistachio. So it just feels like these houses drop these masks where they just give us a certain ingredient there. Like in here, it's going to be more of the cotton candy that you're going to feel, and you can wear it either as a standalone or to just enhance your fragrance. So with this line, there's going to be pomegranate, I think there is cranberry and stuff. So that's what I can say about that one. I do not think it is a clone. And then from the House of Nabeel, I only have one. This, I did say it when I did bring the review. I told you this was challenging. This did not remind me of anything, but it did have but it does have a Middle Eastern feel. It is a serving of a little bit of some greenness, some aromaticness. There was a lot of things going on at the same time. So this fragrance refuses to then zoom on one particular DNA that we have come across before, or at least my nose has come across before, making it one fragrance that I would say potentially is one that is independent to the House of Nabeel. Now, when it comes to the last two, I had to just pull out this one from Maison Alhambra, because Maison Alhambra is one that actually does make fragrances that are very obvious. They're in your face that this is going for whatever. This I tried, guys, to scrape around what it could be going after and whatever. All I can say is the DNA is very, very familiar, giving you that summer fruity tone style of a fragrance, fun, something that feels a lot like 212, that 212 that has champagne, or a little bit of what feels like juicy couture, like a juicy couture. But I think this is one that they just could have been experimenting with, and then just chose to surprise us by packaging it in a bottle that kind of looks or aligns with the Zurich offs just to maybe confuse customers there. So I don't think Summer Forever is a clone, guys. If it is, then I stand to be corrected. That's the only one I managed to pull from the Maison Alhambra fragrances, because Maison Alhambra fragrances are kind of, in your face. So it's very difficult to then come here and try to say, oh, this, because some of them will copy the bottle and everything. Now, last but not least, from the house of our Tanya is going to be this one. I think this one is a standalone, in as much as it's not a favorite of mine because of its heady patchouli, because of the pushiness of the ingredients. I feel this one, to an extent, feels like this. It's not the same, but I mean, a person who would like Hiba is probably going to like this. Heady florals, heavy fragrances, pushy florals, a little bit of some fruit in a fragrance, and an overdose of the patchouli. But I think this is also one that is a standalone. It is quite sweet, so there could be caramel in this. But I don't think our Tanya, was going for a particular DNA on the market. So that's a wrap, guys. So those are the fragrances, guys, that I do feel have elements that make them unique enough to stand alone. I do not think these fragrances are clones or dupes. They may smell like other fragrances or borrow one or two elements from other fragrances, but I think the elements that are more heightened in them make them safe enough to say, no, this one is standing on its own without trying to be like this and that, which is why I gave you that ratio of that ajwad, where you get the rose and the vanilla, but it's not so much to do with that. It then becomes more to do with the spices enough for me to say that is a fragrance, guys, that has enough elements to say it's not exactly a clone. CeeChronicles is my name. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let's meet in the comment section where you're going to tell me more about some fragrances that you feel are standalones. As I said, this is not limited to, it's limited to what I have within my collection, but there's going to be a lot more. Remember to turn on post notifications, guys. That way you get to be notified anytime I upload a video. Like and share this one, and remember that smelling good is a form of good manners. Cheers.